Yeah, but then I also explained if we've seen a military force be so precise that they could literally blow up people's fucking pagers at one end, and then on the other end they're going just shotgun blast. Like, hey, we got no choice but to shoot through the civilians. That seems kind of crazy.
So, you being in the military, you believe that targeting a small select group of officers at the head of an organization with a very daring and ingenious plan, like putting explosive devices in their 1980s drug style pagers, is the same thing as fighting a war in a highly dense urban area against an insurgency that is purposefully hiding itself amongst the civilian population.
I feel like we would have, if this would have been America, obviously they're not America. If it was something to that level, there would have been a ground invasion, and we wouldn't have just blown literally everything to smithereens.
There was a ground invasion.
And they still seem to blow everything to smithereens.
I mean, yeah. Can you show me a war where we didn't blow up buildings?
And I don't consider that a war.
Well, it doesn't matter if you consider it a war. It definitionally is a war.
How are you in the military?
You don't get to decide what's a war, so it's irrelevant. What I'm asking you is, can you demonstrate to me a war where we didn't blow up buildings?
Again, I don't consider that a war. Who said that?
It doesn't matter if you consider it a war. It is a war. Listen, you don't get to decide what's a war. At least not in a debate. If you just want to live in Narnia and live in fairy tale world, we can just do that, and then there's no point for us to talk. And I can tell you don't want this smoke anyway, because unlike Walleye Mike, I do know the facts, and I'm going to blow your shit out of the water. There's not a single time you're going to be able to demonstrate that I'm misrepresenting the facts knowingly. If I do so unintentionally, I will correct myself. So it is a fact that this is a war, and that is the shared reality that we have to accept. You may not agree with the war, but unless you can demonstrate to me that Hamas is not a duly elected government of a place that we refer to as Gaza, which governs itself with its own elected government, and this is a military that they are fighting, definitionally it is a war.
Do you know what the average casualty percentage is of any of the wars that we've had?
Some of the wars that we fought have been higher than the war in Gaza with casualties in regards to civilian ratios. Some of them have been lower. It simply depends on which war you're talking about.
Let's say, right, if globally, right, the average of civilian casualties in a war is 10%, do you think that 83% is reasonable?
It could be reasonable. It depends on the circumstances of the war.
Well, you're just a fucking liar then. You're just a liar. That's fine.
Wait, now I'm a liar because you don't agree with my answer? Wait, excuse me. One thing I'm not going to be, excuse me.
No, you're not about to just
one thing, motherfucker, I'm going to do whatever I want to do, and I'll shut your whole ass up if you don't quit talking over me.
You can tell me there's no way you can consider 83% reasonable.
You are asking me about 10%, and I don't even know what the fuck you're talking about 10% of, because first you said America, and then you said...
How could you say 83% of civilian casualties could be reasonable? In what world is that reasonable?
Because well, first of all, I'm just gonna reject your numbers just right out of the gate.
How are you gonna say you're gonna just disregard the numbers that I'm giving you just because you don't like them?
Because you haven't substantiated them. So now, what I will say is the answer to your question is that what the casualty rates are in Gaza are apparently, seemingly reasonable. Why? Because we don't see Israel purposely targeting civilians. We see Israel doing things to mitigate civilian deaths. We see Israel doing roof knocks on buildings before they attack them. We see Israel dropping leaflets to try to let civilians escape. We don't have any evidence that systemically Israel is purposely targeting civilians over combatants. In fact, all of the evidence seems to suggest that they are doing the opposite. We have Israel going in front of the international criminal courts, and the international criminal courts concluded that there was not evidence of a genocide. So all of the evidence that I have, contrary to you doing the emotional heartstring, pulling at numbers that you don't even understand, doesn't seem to indicate that what they are doing is unreasonable, especially in the consideration in light of the fact that Hamas is purposely hiding behind civilians, that Hamas uses civilians as a human shield, that Hamas puts civilians in between them and the IDF to purposely get civilians killed so that they can use them to gain support, just like they're doing now in this conversation, by the way, and to also further their cause.
Let's say you had a cop, right, who was doing training, right? And there are targets. There's one target you're not supposed to shoot, and there's a target you're supposed to shoot, right? If 83% of the time the person is the wrong target, you're going to think you're aiming for that target. Would you not?
Dude, you're not this dumb washed up, dude.
If what you're saying was what was happening, yes, that could be true. But that's not what's happening. And as far as regurgitating Israeli talking points, you have no evidence to the contrary. There have been no journalists allowed into the war zone. We don't have anybody observing these things. As far as because it's not smart to let journalists into war zones because they die. And by the way, many of them have died in Gaza. Journalists that are Palestinians, many of them have died. Why? Because they're in a war zone. And if we had let them into the war zone and they had got killed, then you all would be screaming that they're killing journalists. So anyway, it just is the case that the evidence we have is that these extremist Muslim terrorists, which are being supported by Iran to commit October 7th, who didn't care about the ICC international law of any kind on October 7th. Suddenly on October 8th, they do care about it. Suddenly it's a genocide because now they're being attacked. I don't think so. The evidence that we have is that the only people who are purposely targeting civilians are the brown fucking Muslim terrorists, the people who are always targeting civilians, by the way. And we have every reason to believe that Israel is killing civilians, but it is unintentional, it is collateral damage. Now, if you want to make an argument about unintentional collateral damage, feel free. But if you're going to try to make the argument that they're intentionally killing civilians, then you've got your job to do it. And I don't think you can. I don't even think you'd know where to begin.
To argue around the facts and use all your little xenophobic bullshit talking points. The facts stand that is an unacceptable ratio. From there's no argument that you could make to make 80% a reasonable amount of civilian casualties. There's no way. There's literally no, unless you're literally gargling the Israeli jizz, there's no way that you could possibly think that that's okay.
Fighting a military that is purposely using civilians as shields, that is placing them strategically so that they do die, that is taking place in a 20-mile strip of land in some of the most densely populated urban areas that any military has ever fought in a population that is extremely youthful. Many of the Gazan people are children. You're telling me that doesn't explain why we have such high civilian casualties?
Again, it's easy to have these Israeli talking points when nobody is able to. It's very easy to just say, hey, they're using everybody as shields. Guys, it's okay. Why don't you let it just mow this
So show us that it's not true, like I told you earlier, because everything Infinite's saying right now is just a much more precise way of saying exactly what I said to you earlier, and you're just like, it's a talking point. Motherfucker, you're a talking point. Everything you're saying is a talking point. You are smarter than this. Understand that they are hiding behind civilians. And we will blow all them motherfuckers up to kill the fucking bad guys. End of story.
I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right.
Well, it's a good thing you're out of the military. Well, it's a good thing you're out of the military now. You should not be in the military.
The greatest intelligence apparatuses in the whole world be able to be more fucking precise. Is that so fucking confusing?
That's not, intelligence is not what's keeping them from being precise. This is a type of war.
You know where everybody is to the point where you could just blow it up and hit everybody. Doesn't that mean you can go in there and be selective of who you kill? Is that not what that means?
Well, it would mean that if we had magic bullets that could travel through buildings and around corners, sure. But in the real world, where what do you expect to happen? They're using air superiority to drop bombs on installations that are launching munitions at them. When Hamas launches rockets from a building, let's say a hospital, they aren't concerned with where those rockets land. They're attempting to use those rockets to do as much damage to civilian infrastructure as possible. And when Israel retaliates by attacking those targets, before they attack them, they roof knock. Before they attack them, they drop leaflets. And then they retaliate with a bomb on a target that just launched rockets at them. This is extremely normal warfare. There's nothing absurd or abnormal about this. Now, the fact that Hamas keeps civilians in those places where those rockets are being launched from, so that when those attacks come and those civilians aren't allowed to leave, they end up being part of the body count. Is that on Israel?
Precision is my only argument against this. I'm not saying Israelis do not have the right to fight back. I'm not saying any of that shit. I'm saying that these percentages are absurd.
Okay, you want,
and there's no way that anybody could convince me of otherwise, especially if the people who are doing these heinous things aren't even allowing people to investigate properly, and we're supposed to take their numbers as
we should just stop killing them, right? We should stop killing the terrorists because they're hiding behind civilians.
Mike, is that what I just said?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
didn't I just say that they have the right? Didn't I just say that they have the right to kill these combatants? Is that not what I just said?
So we need to invent the bullets that Infinite was talking about that go through the walls and go around the civilians and only hit the bad guys.
How do you think we do war? You think we just go in and just start fucking shooting everybody? Is that what you think?
I don't know. I told you earlier. Why don't you tell me? Why don't you tell me what we do? You were in the military.
Unless there's a specific target where it's like, hey, the only time where I'll give you an example. We had something where there's a specific target, right, where he was pretty much hidden for months and months and months and months. The only time they were about to catch this guy was at a funeral, all right? And they killed everybody at the funeral. They used a drone. They killed everybody at the funeral, okay? Something like that, I feel like it's still not good, right? But it's better than that being just a protocol overall. No matter what, we're just gonna take out as many people as we can just to get these 4 or 5 guys. That doesn't make sense.
What's the alternative when you have a group of people?
If it's a target that's a leader, precision.
Yeah, let me ask the question. What is the alternative? I don't want you to say precision. I want you to tell me exactly what you mean. When you have a group of people that are in a densely populated city, surrounded by infrastructure that's booby-trapped, that's filled with enemy fighters, and you don't know who they are because you're fighting an insurgency of sorts, because these people aren't in uniforms, they don't come out, they hide behind things, they hide in rubble, they hide among civilians, they pop out, they launch RPGs. It's not conducive to send troops in there. It's not conducive to send helicopters in there, because you know what you're going to have in that situation? A lot more dead people. Because they're going to trap them, and then they're going to have to fight their way out. And you know what you're going to have? Artillery and bombs. And that's going to be even more death. So what does Israel, excuse me, let me finish. So what does Israel do? Israel sees rockets are coming from a specific location. Israel notes that location. They decide to bomb that location. And then they go to that location and they tell people, this location's about to be bombed, get out. And Hamas doesn't let them leave. We're not talking about people. We're talking about installations that are launching rockets. So when Hamas purposely puts people into those areas that are going to be bombed in order to raise the civilian count, again, what is the alternative? You're talking about sending tanks, helicopters, soldiers on foot into these incredibly dense populated areas. That's just going to result in more casualties, not less.
Job. That's literally their job.
I'm not talking about Israeli casualties. I'm talking about that's going to resort in more Listen, that's going to result in more civilian casualties.
How?
Because you're going to have these troops go in, they're going to get pinned down, there's going to be long, drawn-out artillery strikes to support them. What happens when you have troops that are pinned down in a specific area? Airstrikes and artillery strikes. So, if one bomb is killing people that are already in a building, what do you think multiple artillery strikes and bombs are going to do in order to support the troops that get pinned down in these situations? We've seen this, by the way. It's got, listen, we've seen this. Go back and look up what happened in Mogadishu. Should be pretty easy for you to understand. We've seen this. What happened in 9/11 in Lebanon, on 9/11 in Lebanon. Same thing. Like, we see this time and time again.
I don't think that this is normal. I don't think this should be viewed as something that is acceptable. And the fact that, your side is so xenophobic and that, obviously 9/11 was a horrible thing, but that shouldn't just dehumanize all fucking brown people. And I feel like because they've been dehumanized so fucking much that it's almost like nobody, like we're not supposed to care. You guys are treated like, why the fuck are we supposed to care? They're killing the bad guys. They're brown. Look at them. That does not fucking calculate properly to me. It doesn't make sense. If that was happening to any other place, you guys would be losing y'all fucking minds. If this was happening in Italy or fucking Germany or any of these other places, you guys would be losing your fucking mind.
Yeah, except that it did happen in Germany.
If that was happening here, you guys would be losing y'all fucking mind.
Yeah, except it did happen in Germany, and we did it. Not only did it happen in Germany, it happened in Japan, and we also did it, and I don't regret any of it. I don't regret killing every fucking German that we killed, and I don't feel bad about it, and I don't think we were wrong for doing it. If anything, we should have killed more of them. If anything, we should have killed more of them the First World War, that we wouldn't have had to kill so many the Second. But anyway, no, you want to make it about brown because as a brown person, you have a mental disorder where all you think about is race. Because I've heard it from Muslims right here in this server, Muslims who live in Saudi Arabia, Muslims who live in Syria, Muslims that live in Pakistan.
Do you even have a passport?
So
have you even been out of the country?
I've heard it from Muslims all over the world right here. I'm 100% sure I'm talking. I don't know why you feel the need to interject. I've heard it from Muslims all over the world. Not only that, we can clearly just go to this thing that we have now. I don't know if you've been introduced to this thing called...
You've heard everything from your computer chair.
I don't know if you've been introduced to this thing called the internet, but we can clearly just go to YouTube and we can listen to Muslims talk in places like Speaker's Corner in England. We can listen to them talk in their mosques where we have recordings. We can see investigations done by the FBI where they've been thwarted with terrorist attacks. We can see the terrorist attacks that they've actually done. We can see the terrorist attacks that they did in Nice, France. We can see where they blew up themselves in fucking the UK. We can see where they fucking did 9/11. And I could just go on and on and on. On top of that, we have survey data coming from Pew Research where Pew interviewed tens of thousands of people from over 50 Muslim nations all over the world. And they did surveys on these people to ask them, hey, what's up with your view on terrorism? What's up with your view on extremism? How do you feel about doing certain things like committing violence to get your political will? Guess what? An overwhelming majority of these Muslims supported it. So we have loads of data, anecdotal, survey, interviews that you can see, their own actions, what they tell us, anything that you want to justify my view. And by the way, lots of people on the left, people I'm sure you've never heard of that are giants in this space, leftists, people like Christopher Hitchens, go listen to what he had to say. He's dead now. Go listen to what he had to say about Muslims. Go listen to Sam Harris, a lefty, a total leftard, one I don't agree with, who's got total Trump derangement syndrome. But go listen to what he had to say about Muslims. There are plenty of people that are on the left side of the spectrum who completely agree with me. So this is not about race. This is not about political spectrum. This is about Muslims represent the greatest threat to the Western world of any threat, including China, which, by the way, no matter where these Muslims go, it's one thing we can agree on. Russia has to fight them. China has to fight them. America has to fight them. Anywhere these motherfuckers go, they are a fucking plague on humanity. And if you don't want to believe that, if you don't want to accept it with all that evidence, none of which you'll be able to refute, that's fine. Put your head in the fucking sand and bebop your ass on up out of here. I don't care. I came to my belief about Muslims by looking at the evidence. That's it. I don't have anything personally against Muslims. In fact, I've argued that the founders of this country stated very affirmatively that this nation was made not only for Christians and Jews, but also for Muslims. I've argued that right here. Our founders said that. But the strain of Islam that dominates the planet is extremely dangerous. And I want to see that ideology gone. And I don't know why it's so crazy for me to say that, and you think that's some kind of racism, xenophobia, whatever nonsense you said. Why wouldn't you want to see it gone?
If half of your talking point is you trying to sound reasonable, and the other half is like kill all of the Browns, then you act like the other side is just going over my head.
I didn't say kill all the Browns.
Maybe you should correct the way.
Yeah, we don't gotta kill them.
But I didn't say
re-education.
that. I said kill. I was making a point to you accusing me of racism when I said I don't care what color the Muslims are. You can't talk about these things without people devolving in the United States especially. They've all been taught to view the Palestinian-Israeli conflict through the lens of critical theory, where they impose this notion of oppressor-oppressed onto the conflict, and they extrapolate it from the United States with, blacks and whites and other similar incidents. And then they assume that that's the same set of characteristics that are defining this conflict. And they want to talk about it through some lens of suppressing brown people or whatever. And it just could be nothing further from the truth when it comes to Israelis and Palestinians.